Good evening and welcome to our coverage of the Formula Race Elite, the second of two Tuesday night off-season races. Last week, getting a bit ahead of myself. Last week we had a meeting at Silverstone where it was the Sunday night theme where you would have a 20-minute sprint race, all from the same grid, all from the right grid, in terms of the qualifying. You'd qualify and start where they qualified. And then after that, you had the full reverse grid, provided that you completed 3/4 of last week's first race. Then you were eligible for a reverse grid slot. It's not that today because of the Nurburgring, and quite frankly, trying to wait for everybody to finish the first race will be a bit of a nightmare. So what we've done here is we've gone for a full 60-minute blast around the Nurburgring Nordschleiffe, which will be to some drivers' taste and certainly not others. No pit stops here. And effectively a one-shot or one-lap quali, with the fact that qualifying is 8 minutes long. You have a joker lap, which basically breaks off at the end of the Grand Prix, the new Grand Prix lap. So you basically cut out the first sort of stadium section in Sector 1, power down to the Ford chicane and into the hairpin, back up past the Schumacher S's, and then just where you go for the Coca-Cola curve to come back around, you then turn left and go onto the Green Hell. And the Green Hell, it may well be, for those who do not get their qualifying right. We're passing at a premium around the back of the circuit, and with this track being effectively the length of 5 circuits rolled into one, overtaking is going to be incredibly difficult. And should you find yourself stuck behind a slower driver, you could lose up to what would be 5 times what you would usually lose behind those. So if they're, say for example, on normal size circuit, about 2.5 seconds slower than you, you can expect that to be about 15 to 20 seconds, just because of how difficult, how narrow it is around this circuit. As we look at Stuart Rogers to help me illustrate the point. Look how narrow that is, barely enough room to swing your cat around. And so qualifying here and a decent start is going to be imperative. A couple of bits of housekeeping. We've got a couple of rookies, a couple of newer entries from last week, or that weren't here last week, that are here this week. You've got Jan, I'm going to say this probably wrong, Jan Szczesny, who is in the Army Green Ford Mustang, and you've got Tristan Vizcaino in the Ferrari, who's just pootling around now, trying to get a couple of laps in. Very difficult to set a clean lap around here, it would seem, because we've had a lot of drivers in here for a long, long time, and about half of them have managed to set a clean lap. I'm sure that won't be the case in qualifying, because they'll have a couple of goes to at least, or a couple of attempts to at least get some of the way around to practice, and it's all about driving within yourself when it's a one-lap quali, as we can see now. I think Damien van der Waal in the Ferrari, very strong in Pro and Taco Tuesdays last season, and very strong again last week. He's currently setting he's currently got pole. You can get times of up to sort of 8 minutes and 15 seconds around here. 8 minutes 12 if you're really quick, but 8 minutes 16.9 will do very nicely indeed. You can see for yourself that deltas are spread out, so you've got 3 seconds, then up to 6 seconds off when you're only at P5, all the way to 38 seconds, which is Michael Ossel. I don't think that's a representative time for Michael Ossel, but it just illustrates the point, doesn't it? So, let's see if we can see some action just a moment here. That's Trevor Mendes, who's not on track. Gordon Brown, who is on track now, as he's going to go down to the Dirtingoer. And we've got here him in the Lamborghini. Not the car to have in the straight line, as we found out as I found out at Austria just this week. Gone very slow in the straight line compared to a lot of competitors here, especially that Lex. As you can see, Stuart Rogers, for example, he's going to have a bit of party time down the Dirtingoer and around the rest of the lap, where you can get some really decent speed. It's not the best in the corners, but in terms of a straight line speed, Lexus is probably the car to have. We're looking now at, who can we see? That's Stefan Muller in the Ford Mustang. He's just going around for another lap. So you've got, it says 23 seconds. I would suggest with everything that is, or with the way that this track is, you're going to have probably 8.5 minutes of downtime. Oh, no, not even that. Strap in, boys. We've got 11 and a half minutes of this in terms of waiting for the cars to come around, just simply because of the sheer length of this track. 25 kilometres long. So you think the average circuit's, what, 5 kilometres, 3 miles? You know, that's 5 of them rolled into one around, and probably the most unforgiving track layouts in terms of exit curbs, in terms of barriers. So no risks really to be taken. Let's see if I can find some action whilst we get through this, because otherwise it's going to be a very long 11 minutes. Here's Luke Prentice in the Lamborghini. Where's he? He is, I think, he's just going into the carousel. That's handy enough. He's, I would say, probably about 3/4 of the right way round. We'll just stick with him to see if there's any, see how accurate that is, because he's just heading round now the back of the circuit. He'll be in about a minute's time around the Dirtinger, probably about 2/3 of the way around, looking at it now as I see. So let's see if we can find another driver who's just coming up to finish their lap, who's car number 34. That is Vaclav Pospisil, who I'm hoping, judging by that name, I've pronounced correctly. Bit of a mess on the front end. He's staying in the Porsche from last week, where beforehand he's been in the McLaren, throwing it into the final couple of corners down the dirty. He'll be getting up to 175 miles an hour in that car. I would have thought. Very neat and tidy through there. You're going to need to be honest, especially if you get that far into your lap. You're probably not going to have time for another lap. So once you get down the long straight, you're probably going to need to be almost wheel perfect. As he goes, where does he go? Doesn't matter. When he goes out, it's 9.5 seconds off the pace, which would seem like a massive delta, and psychologically it still does. I can tell you from experience, it still does. But when you look at it in the cold light of day, that's what probably, if you were to divide that by 5, it's less than 2 seconds, which then all of a sudden feels a little bit, you know, a little bit more sort of realistic around here. See if we can get back onto somebody who's going to cross the line. There's nobody really apart from Luke Prentice, so we will stick with him just to show really about the vast scale of this track, really. Just to try to sort of back your point up as he goes through the fast downhill left-hander before then chucking it in again. He's got to be really careful around the mini carousel, because if he gets that wrong, he's in the wall. It's either a best case scenario, if you miss the line there, you're off onto the grass, and it will cost you 2 seconds just to gather it back up. So you've got to be really, really careful here. Still the black and yellow livery from last week, a tribute, I suspect, to the Ipswich Speedway team, as he now fires it up again. As I've said before with the Lamborghini, not the car to have in a straight line, but Luke does like this track, and it's one of those tracks really that rewards a bit of bravery, and he's nothing if not that. He's tenacious as he attacks this particular circuit. It's one of his favourites, so whilst I don't envisage him being the absolute quickest, I would suspect he'll be there or thereabouts. It's one of his favourite tracks. It's one of those that he attacks, and if you attack it here, then 99 times out of 100 you're rewarded. Overcommit and you'll come a cropper. So he goes, threads it through again, neat and tidy, uses a little bit more of the track than possibly still before him. Now fires itself back onto the new Nurburgring. I say new, but it was built in the 80s, so it's not that new. And it does, yeah, he takes 3 seconds off, so that's the place. Again, you extrapolate that around the rest of the lap, and it's more like half a second on a normal circuit. So I won't keep mentioning that, but for the moment, and especially for qualifying, I think that might be very relevant indeed. Who's this? Is this Josef Voltman? Where's he? Well, he's a little bit further back, so I'm going to see if I can find car 104. Who's this? Car 104 got straight all the way down, and that is Alberto Aragones, who it was dominant, really, wasn't he, in the racing last week. Walked away with race 1, a Silverstone 20-minute sprint that we mentioned earlier on, and for the 40 minutes race he was on course to win that, having started at the very, very back. He was third. He was catching the leader with I think it was De Jong, who hadn't yet pitted. Aragones was 5 seconds behind the net leader, and De Jong was due to pit within the next couple of minutes as per the rules and regulations. No pit stops here this time around. It is a 1-hour blast around the Nurburgring Nordschleiffe. So no issues there in terms of, where have you got time you stop? Have you got just basically make sure that you've got enough fuel to get to the end. I suspect that there'll be different fuel, vastly different to be fair, fuel totals. The Ford Mustang probably going to be one of the heavier ones, but if you're in the Aston, if you're in the Ferrari, you could probably get away with, I'm not going to say almost a lap less, but I reckon you could get away with about 10 litres or so less with the 1 hour race, with how, you know, with how this track is, and with the fact that you don't need any or need to fuel as he goes into the pits. I wonder what that lap would have been, but he's just gone out, he's had a look at the track, and we shall see what happens in qualifying. Qualifying effectively a 1 lap sprint, a 1 lap shootout. The only difference is that if you do manage to mess your lap up about half or between when you start and with a couple of minutes to go, you can port to pits, use that joker lap. There's no rules in the briefing that has prohibited that, so certainly not the ones that I can see. So that's the only thing, is you do get a second chance of sorts, but if you mess it up the first time, the pressure really does ramp up, because mess it up the second time, you're going out for another out lap, and then it starts to get a little bit tight for time, especially with the expected field spread that we're going to have, as there's only obviously 1 pit exit, so all the drivers don't really want to be entering the track at the same time, which of course is a bit of a risk when you've got that joker lap, because some drivers will be leaving the pits and going round after a minute and a half, and some will be just sort of starting their lap. So that's something to keep an eye out on, as some drivers leave the pits and some drivers, you know, have done the joker lap and started to start their main qualifying lap. That's something to keep an eye out on, which we will do as and when that becomes relevant. Still 5 minutes of filler to go. Who's that? That's Josef Voltman, not Joachim. That's Josef Voltman in the Ferrari, just him and car number 75, which is Stefan Muller in the Mustang. I think Muller just about got over the line, didn't he, to start his lap, just when the clock ticked down for the official end of the session. Where is Josef Voltman going to go? Go through some of the cones there. Yellow flags are out, and he goes fastest. Well, 8 minutes 15. That Ferrari's really hooked up here. Wonder if that will be the benchmark going into qualifying. You want to hope he saves that for qualifying as well, because otherwise, if someone of that pace starting towards the back because they haven't managed to set a clean lap time, it's going to be a very difficult race for him if that does happen to be the case. I reckon you can lose, if you're starting out of position here, by the time you've cleared back to even sort of middle of the road, middle of the pack, I reckon you'll probably lose upwards of 1 minute to 1 minute 30 to the cars that you need to be, you know, if you're one of the front runners, just because of how tight it is and just because of how much field spread you get, especially in that first corner. We'll ride on board with somebody when they leave the pits. I'll explain a little bit more about that, but I reckon you can lose well over 1 minute just as you try and pick your way through cars that are in a different race to you. So that outlines how crucial qualifying is around this most difficult of tracks. So Stefan Muller now currently 13 seconds off the pace, 11th place. Where did he go? We don't know. He's completed his lap. I assume it was quite quick. Right, and who's that leaving first of all? I think that might be a Royal commentary partner, or new commentary partner, certainly one of the Royal commentators. That might be, where is he? Is that Gareth Wood, I think, in the Aston Martin? Where is he? It'll shake itself out, to be fair. It's just at the moment going to be, there he is. There he is. No, he's in the Beach team, Aston Martin, in tribute, I think, to the British GT team from 2021. Bit of memory about Beach team. They're an ice cream company, and Brands Hatch during a media day a little while back, it was baking hot, and I remember them coming up to the press team and handing out a load of free ice cream, free Beach team ice cream, and I can tell you it very much did hit the spot. Thank you very much. So if you're watching Andrew Howard, it was appreciated, it really was. So who we got here? He's one of the first cars out. I think there's a TF Sports Aston Martin who's just got out ahead, which is, it's going to be a little bit choppy as we try and find out who is that. That is, I think, Jake Hanley in the 86. He's one of them. There's a Ferrari there as well. It's going to be a little bit sort of choppy. As a lot of cars basically now going to be starting to try and find some space. Hanley's the first driver out on circuit, so space is going to be an issue. We'll keep it up a brisk pace because you want to get some heat into your tyres. You want to get some pressure. There you go. He's doing some gentle weaving. Get some pressure into those tyres as he approaches the NGK chicane, the slightly less tighter version compared to what you've seen in Formula 1 from before, because of the way that these GT3 cars handle now as he goes towards the Coca-Cola curve. This is the Joker lap, so on their main lap and during the race they'll turn left to go onto the Nordschleife. there in qualifying, if they're on an out lap, they will turn right to come and start the lap, because you can't expect them to do a full 8-minute out lap. That would be ridiculous. Here he goes then. This is Jake Hanley on the first lap. Now, you break about 100 metres in the Aston Martin. Need to get it to the left-hand side. Slightly different corner. Normally, you go all the way over to what is effectively the stadium loop. Here, a bit of a pinch point. It's more akin to the old layout where I think it was up until about 2001. They just had a chicane. That could be a pinch point early in the race, especially as cars try and jostle for position with the tyre barriers coming in there. With the way the ACC physics work, if you hit the tyre barriers, that's you damaged and stopped dead. So that could be something to watch out for, especially in the midfield, as they'll jostle for position and space going into the first chicane. We're now at the Dunlop hairpin, and still part of the more familiar layout to, no doubt, a lot of you. Now he's going up past the Schumacher S's. We will in a minute. I promise he'll appear. There he is. There he is as he now accelerates down to what's going to be the end of the Formula 1 lap, so to speak. Now he'll tip it in here. And you kind of don't want to take too much curb, because it'll spit you out to the outside. And you need to then tighten your line up to bring it back in, especially when it's downhill. There'll be a little bit of understeer as well for the right-hander as he completes now what is just this last sweeping corner before you get to the NGK chicane, and then you're onto the Nordschleife, where it then gets, you can see how relatively wide it is here. It gets a lot narrower as he chucks it through there. All looks fairly safe at the moment, but actually quite sensible here now as we go through onto the Nordschleife. Just misses the apex there. It's not a bad thing, because the way that the corner goes off camber in the middle, really, you kind of lose the front end, and then it gets really tricky. As you're going downhill, it's sort of sends you to the outside whether you like it or not. And there we go, into the wall. There's the first victim of the Nordschleife. Is he going to keep it up, or is he going to carry? I think he's going to carry on. It wasn't awful. It was one of those that will cost him a second, but a second might not be too much around here. As we take it now, we'll pick him back up a little bit later in the lap, because I want to see him crossing the line here, but I am conscious that other drivers probably want to see other drivers as well. So who's that behind? Let me just try and see if I can find someone in the mid-pack. That's Trevor Mendes. He's got a little bit of traffic in front as they all try and start. I think they're all starting their lap or doing a joker lap. What you might get is a couple of drivers doing 2 out laps to try and get a little bit more space. It's not uncommon here. You get a couple doing 2 joker laps, so Pospisil in front does another joker lap, whereas Trevor Mendes goes on to the Nordschleife. So we'll start to space out just a little bit in the green and purple with a little bit of yellow trim BMW. So we're learning a new car, and certainly a new colour scheme as well for the man who represents Mauritius on Thursday nights in the FRL World Tour. That's back again this week, qualifying at 10:30. So if you want to tune in for that, I think if we've got a stream, I'm not sure whether we have or not, but the results will be posted within the server. If not, certainly a very fun series, certainly one of those that doesn't take itself too seriously. It's basically turn up and drive for a lot of drivers, and all the right natures. I think there's still a couple of spaces left open, although you'll have to speak to one of the admins for that. So we've got Trevor Mendes there. A little bit further ahead, I think there's going to be a bit of a pinch point. There's Serafino Gabino in that rather striking Porsche. A couple of cars in front, which you'll hope not to be too much faster than. I think one of those is Car 179. That's Christian Keller in the McLaren. Can't quite make out who the other one is. That might be Gareth Wood. No, I think he's gone for another lap, isn't he? So it's not going to be that. We'll pick that up. We'll find that out probably a little bit later on now. Very tricky complex there. You need to make sure. It's always tempted to try and take the outside of that exit for the left-hander, but you really do need to keep it as tight as you possibly can to get a better exit. And to what is another acceleration zone, long acceleration zone. Careful around the left-hander. You think you can go faster than you actually can, because you've got another left-hander straight in front of you, which you need to get on the brakes for and be somewhat steady. Then go 8 kilometres, 5 miles around the lap. Only another 16, 17 kilometres to go. Yeah, it's brutal. You really do have to stay switched on around here. So let me see if I can get a couple of others laps here now. Is that Damien de Jong? So he's now the lead car, which tells me that a couple of the Aston Martins, I think, not necessarily I think, yeah, both of the Aston Martins that were out there. So I think it's Wood and I think it was Hanley have both gone again. Look at that. Look at the gaggle of blue cars right down the bottom right, as you would see the track map. That's the Grand Prix map. So there'll be a lot of people doing jokers. That should even itself out. I say pretty soon. We've only got a minute left, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I can assure you, long after time, things will start to change and shape up. So we're going to see with Damien de Jong in the Ferrari, the 306 Ferrari again, someone who'd been very, very quick last season. I think he'll be towards the sharp end again here. Let's just see. We'll follow him. We'll catch him back up later because he's just going around the carousel now. So we've got a good couple of minutes before he starts to cross the line and starts to put up a time with officially 20 seconds to go. Here's one of those who's leaving it late. That's Luke Prentice, and I think that's Adam Sharp in the Lamborghini behind him. We'll have a little look again. I think that's the blue and yellow Lamborghini. So these two relatively similar on pace. I think Luke's edges it round the Nurburgring here. Just simply because he likes the track, while I know that Sharp does not like the track now. To go into the Ford chicane, very awkward in terms of you have to hang it to the left-hand side. You can take a lot of exit because where normally you try and bring the car towards the left-hand side for the right-hander, you can actually keep it relatively towards the inside. There's banking on that corner, and it will keep your car relatively rotating anyway. Around there. So he's officially sick. It will change, won't it? It will change, so you can be sure of that. So I'll try and see if I can pick up another car just to at least give the illusion that there's a little bit of variety at this moment in time, even if right now it is all a little bit staccato. We're just waiting for the crescendo of, well, 10 minutes time, really, isn't it? 10 minutes, you've got a maximum waiting time. I reckon we'll be done within 8 of those. With, I would suggest, the slower drivers get around in about 8 minutes 30, 8 minutes 45, sort of worst case scenario. And the quicker drivers, well, you saw an 8 minutes 15 exactly from Josef Volkmann in the Ferrari. A bit of a surprise. He's not quite shown that pace before, even if he has been a very solid driver. Adam Sharp now on his main lap. A little bit all over the curves. I just wonder, no, he's survived. So he will continue now round to the Nordschleiffe. I'll see if we can pick up Damien van der Waal because he's now coming onto the dirting hour. Ferrari's not going to be the strongest, not the weakest in the straight line. It's fairly low drag, but hasn't quite got the grunt of, say, a Mustang or a Lexus, possibly even a Beamer or an Aston Martin. But it is deceptively quick, especially with the aero as is. Certainly one of those cars that you think you can easily pass if you get behind it in a straight line, and I can assure you that is not the case. So we've got Damien de Jong now halfway down that straight. It feels like it goes on forever. Lesser drivers such as me, very likely to sort of switch off until you get to that curve here. Down the hill, you pick up a little bit more speed, then you go uphill, and that helps with the braking going into the final complex. Kind of spot your braking points now, keep it neat and tidy. You don't want to mess it up here. You've just driven round for 9 minutes. There we go now. Onto the straight. This is going to be the first time Damien de Jong crosses the line. And what does he set? And that is an 8 minutes 25.5. Fairly pedestrian from Damien de Jong. I think it's one of those that he just wanted to get around, really. Get around and set a time. You can see a few cars that are in the pits having not set a time. Who's the next over the line? That is Car number 87. That is Robert van der Sloot. Van der Sloot goes 4.5 seconds off the pace. Roughly what we expected from Van der Sloot, who hasn't been showing top-end pace, but nevertheless has been very sensible indeed. Now you've got car number 19. Have to scroll all the way back down, I think, unless... Oh, where are we? Who's just trying to find someone to cross the line. Where is he? There he is, Serafino Gambino, right in front of me. There he goes in the Porsche, and that is 1.2 seconds off the pace. So he goes second for the moment before we then get to car number 75. Car 75 is just about to cross the line. And this one is further down. It's Stefan Muller, who is 32nd now officially, although there's plenty of cars in the pit lane, so I suspect that he won't be starting there for long, provided he keeps it relatively simple through here. Neat and tidy, clambers the curbs he can in the Mustang, buys himself off the corner. One of the fastest cars on the grid in terms of doing that, in terms of acceleration. Crosses the line over the cone. Where does he go? Has to go all the way back up again. And he goes third. tenth of a second off of Kabina. So you drive 25 kilometres nearly, and you're still only separated by a tenth. Let's have a look here quickly at, I think car 17 is the next one. That's Jose Voltman. Where are we going to put ourselves here? Keeps it relatively neat through there. You can, again, clamber the curves a lot in that Ferrari. And he's going to fire himself down to the front straight for one time only. Keeps it to the left-hand side, line of least resistance. And that is pole position by a long, long margin. I suspect that won't be beaten. That's 8 minutes and 15 seconds. 0.5 for the German, who has a bit of a statement of intent in what must be his own race. And I don't know whether we're going to get anybody to beat that. Is Damien van der Waal. Let's have a look at him just quickly. There we go. Let's just see. Fires himself out of the corner. Here's the man to beat it if he is going to beat it. Damien van der Waal in the Ferrari across the line. And I don't think he's done it. He must have. Well, that was all very bizarre. Just completed his lap time. Meanwhile, Jan Szczesny in the Mustang, the armour green Mustang, we haven't quite seen it, has crossed the line. He's 2 seconds off the pace. There's one of the examples. Van der Waal is going to be starting a lot further back than he would have hoped. Pospisil, he has popped himself. He's still third, isn't he? Yeah, he's popped himself third. About 8 tenths ahead of de Jong in the Porsche. Let's see if we can find Luke Prentice has invalidated as well. I've just said about how much he liked the track. Not a lot at the moment. Here's Darren Mark Davis, former commentator, currently 8th place, half a minute off the grid. I suspect of the drivers that do set a lap, that may be towards the back. But he's done what a lot of drivers haven't done yet, as he goes, well, he's 9th now, because who's that that's crossed the line? I think that's Josh Clayton in the Aston Martin. He puts himself 5th. And next up across the line, we've got, I think it's Adrianov in that. That's a bit jolty, isn't he? He must be on a pad. In the purple Porsche, very striking colour. Now fires his way through the final section of corners. Can't make a mess here because you've done 9 minutes of driving. You don't want to waste it now. A little bit jolty coming out the final corner, but it's fine. Where's he going to put himself? He's going to put himself in that Porsche. He's got the top 10 to aim for at the moment. Where does he go? And he goes 9th. He goes 5 seconds up on Darren Mark Davies in the Ford Mustang. Solid effort. He's got round. And that'll be him starting a little bit higher up. Now, next across the line, we've got car 141, which is Jamie Christie, who's very Scottish. Down the dirting over now. And where's he going to put this then? I suspect this will be fairly quick. The man that was in Pro, whilst he found himself towards the middle and rear of Pro last season, that was a much smaller class. It's now going up to nearly 40 cars next season. I suspect he'll be doing rather well. More immediate matters, where's he going to go? And that is 3rd place. That's an excellent lap time from Jamie Christie. 9 seconds nearly off the pace, which sounds a lot, but isn't really around here. And that will do very, very nicely for the Flying Scotsman. Now, car 34, we've lost him. Where are we going to find him? Who's next across the line? It's a bit of a muddle. I'll tell you what, where are we going to go? We're going to go to, here's Adam Sharp. He's a little bit far down. I'm going to try and see if I can get someone a little bit closer to the line. And I think I'm going to go with Yannick Gerling, the German. No, I'm not. Curse of the commentator. As soon as I get that. Apologies, Yannick. I've just caught your moment online. You've got to drive all that time. And unfortunately, you lose it right at the end. That car is beaten up, isn't it? Oh, no. What a shame. What a shame. Where's he going to go? He's still going to complete the lap, is he? Where's it put him? Well, it's not going to put him anywhere. He's invalidated. As soon as you hit the wall and go off on this game, you invalidate, come what may. Here's Camille Clack. Cross the line, and where's he go? Camille Clack, 12th. A little bit faster than Check Myself, and he's well into the midfield with that effort now. A couple of cars still left across the line, one of which is Sharp here, expecting this to be quicker certainly than he'd expected. He's not a fan of this circuit at all, but where's he going to put the Lamborghini? Where's he going to put the Lamborghini? As he drives across the line, yellow flags aloft, and he goes 6th. A 6th place with one more runner to go. That is car 334. We'll just wait for him to cross the line now because I don't want to chop and miss it. And that he stays in 6th. So we've got ourselves a grid here. Only 18 of the 36 cars managed to set a valid lap time, which is, it just says it all about how difficult this track is to get right, even to get legal, quite frankly. But the standout show really is Josef Voltman in the Ferrari, 8 minutes and 15 seconds, and with his, I would suggest, his main rival, Damien van der Waal, in the other Ferrari, not setting a valid lap time. I would suggest that he's one of the favourites now, probably the favourite, Josef Voltman, to go and win this race. A lot can happen in a minute, in an hour, but I would suggest that he is probably best off. You've got the rookie then, Jan Cigetny, in the Mustang. He's second in the Army Green Mustang that you can see there, ahead of Jamie Christie in the McLaren. Vaclav Pospisil has snuck onto the second row. He's fourth on the grid, with Damien de Jong in fifth, ahead of Adam Sharp in sixth. Ivan Glinkin seventh, ahead of Josh Clayton, who got round and set a legal lap time. So he'll be, relatively satisfied with that. Serafino Gabino in ninth place for Porsche. Stefan Muller ended up in the top 10 ahead of Lee Colpitts. We didn't see his lap time, but Lee Colpitts will start from 11th ahead of Alexander Kalugin and Robert van der Slot. Camo Clark rounds off row 7 and 14th ahead of Nikita Chekmazov in the Lexus, with Alexei Adrianov in 16th for Porsche, with Michael Ossel and Darren Mark Davies the last two to set a lap time, whilst it does have Tristan Vizcaino in 19th and Daniel Laptiov in 20th. That may all change just depending on the gods of ACC. I'll leave it there for a couple of moments and we'll be right back with what will be the shorter formation lap. You're not going to be going watching these all warm their tyres up for the duration for 10 minutes. You're not going to be seeing that, as they have a shorter formation lap halfway down the back straight. So, with 4 minutes left to session start, I think we've lost a driver, haven't we? So, we'll run through the grid again and try and work out who it is. It's Josef Voltman will start from pole ahead of Jan Cigetny in the Mustang. I promise you he's there, you just can't see him because of the way that this camera works. Goes on ACC. In third place, we've got Jamie Christie ahead of fourth place Vaclav Pospisil in the Porsche. Fifth place, we've got Daniel de Jong in the Ferrari, one of the admins here, hence the name Supercomputer, alongside Adam Sharp in the Lamborghini. He'll go from sixth. Ivan Glinkin in seventh will go in the Lexus. Expect him to be very potent at the start with the acceleration of that Lexus. Ahead of Josh Clayton in the Aston Martin, Serafino Gabino in ninth on the grid for Porsche, with Stefan Muller rounding out the top 10 in the Ford Mustang. It's somewhere in the middle, isn't it? Because there was 18 cars that set a lap time. Darren Mark Davies was the last of them. He's 17th. Lee Colpitts is in the BMW. He starts 11th alongside Alexander Kalugin. Robert van der Slot in the Ferrari, the 87 Ferrari. He goes from 13th ahead of Kamil Klak and Nikita Chekmazov in the second Lexus. From there, you've got Michael Ossel. He goes 16th in the McLaren ahead of Darren Mark Davies, the former commentator, in 17th. Tristan Vizcaino in 18th. He's the first or the last of those that didn't set a lap, which tells me he got probably the furthest round. Yannick Gerling in the Ferrari. He's 19th on the grid. We saw the end of his lap time. It looked like it was probably going to be a fairly quick one, but unfortunately, he ended up in the barriers in the final complex. They're ahead of Damien van der Waal in the Ferrari. He was probably going to be one of the faster qualifiers had he managed to get a lap in together. Expect to see him coming through the field. Maximilian Morneweg in the McLaren goes from 21st ahead of Gareth Wood in the Aston Martin. 23rd is where we find Trevor Mendes, and he shares row 12 with Simon Williams. Simon Dunn in 25th will go alongside Grant Dibsbury in 26th, who had a tough round, didn't he, in last week, but certainly in race 2 when he was starting from third. He got spun on lap 1, didn't he? And that caused all that chaos. We'll be hoping for better luck here. Gordon Brown in 27th in the Lamborghini is starting alongside Joachim Vereth in the Audi. 29th is Luke Prentice. He'll be disappointed with that because he's normally a lot quicker around here. 30th is Michel van der Waal in the second Van der Waal in the BMW. And they are ahead of Jake Hanley and Stuart Rogers on row 16. Row 17 is filled by Christian Keller and Daniel Starkloff, whose bad luck in this mini-series continues. Alberto Algronesis is 35th in the Mustang. Expect him to come through the field, especially in the car that quick, although he will lose a lot of time behind a lot of slower runners. He was so dominant last week. He finds himself towards the back here alongside Chris Gedman, one of the admins, and well, he was plucky last week, wasn't he, fighting off cars that you'd expect to pass him. Silverstone will be looking for more of that grit this time around. Graham Love in 37th and Alexei Adrianov in 38th round off the grid. 38 cars, nearly 40 cars going into the tightest of turn ones, and we are just about to get underway as we've got 30 seconds to go. You'll be having to hit drive, make sure that your fuel levels are right, make sure that your tyre pressures are right, especially with this being with a 3x3 time multiplier. This will finish a little bit later than what you would suggest with the hour in terms of game time. So you've got to make sure that you've allowed for that. As we now say, with 20 seconds to go, we'll be getting underway. Hopefully nobody goes from the pit lane unless they desire so. We're going to follow it, I think, from Jan Zizhetny in the Mustang, because I do fancy on the inside he might have a run at Josef Voltman. So the formation, not lap, is it? Formation sprint, the formation sort of mini lap is underway as the cars all sort of try and warm the brakes up as best they can, get as much temperature into those as you possibly can, because you're going to be getting on the brakes very early, very sharply indeed when you get to turn one, which is as tight as you like, and even tighter with that tighter second corner. Here's Jan Zizhetny now in that army green Ford Mustang, a little bit far out of his box. It won't be anything to concern him really ahead of race start. Now we've through the final corner, going to be a rolling start here. Just watch for some drivers who might try take a bit of an advantage of the rather relaxed box faces that you find on here in terms of when you're starting to line up, you have to stay within the green box. I reckon there'll be a few drivers who might take some liberties here now. As we see the leaders, Voltman and Zizhetny, head to head with Christie, Pospisil, De Jong and Sharp in behind. Could be any one of those leading out the first corner with how tight that second corner is. We're about to find out now as we're waiting for the green lights. We're still waiting. They're just coming onto the green light. Go, and go. It's go, go, go. And that is a great start, I think, from Jan Zizhetny. No, not quite. He's bogged down in the Mustang. That's Joachim Voltman. Josef Voltman in the Ferrari has got the drop on the Mustang, but that has allowed Jamie Christie to go around the outside in the McLaren. Now, it could be tight here. There is drama in the background, and that Jamie Christie, I think, is challenging for second. Zizhetny holds on, but Josef Voltman in the Ferrari leads away, going into the first, or at the end of the old first sector now, going into the forecurve as they start to sort themselves out. I'm just going to take a look and see. Vaclav Pospisil is now in fourth place. He stays fourth ahead of Damien de Jong and Adam Sharp in sixth, so it looks okay at the front, but there was drama going into turn one at the back. I did see a car hit the wall. It'll be a little while before we find out exactly what's happened there, so we're going to stick with the front for the moment as Josef Voltman now is going to look to build a lead over Zizhetny in the Mustang. The Mustang has some attention from Jamie Christie in the McLaren, with Vaclav Pospisil, De Jong, Sharp and everyone else trying to be seventh behind him, all following in short order now as they head towards the Schumacher S's very difficult corner on cold tyres and heavy fuel, and especially when you're all jostling for position. I think Stefan Muller still stayed 10th and Serafino Gabino in the Porsche still 9th. We'll find out hopefully at the end of this sector, otherwise we've got 2 minutes to try and work out exactly what's gone on. Voltman now looks like he's stretching away. Doesn't look like we're going to find out for a little while exactly how they all shake out, so we're going to have to go with it just for the moment. Zizhetny still holding off Christie in the McLaren. Pospisil now thinking you might have a little look here. And this is where you have to settle in for a bit, because this is very narrow indeed. So it's all about survival until you get possibly onto the Duttinger at the other end of the Nordschleife. Voltman, meanwhile, is building a bit of a gap. It looks to me, to the eye, to be about 1.5 seconds already. He looks like he's going to scamper away and try and send a postcard. Szczesny and Christie are going with him, and so is Pospisil. De Jong looks like he's holding up the Lamborghini there of Adam Sharp. Ivan Glinkin and Josh Clayton are also in there, and then there's a bit of a gaggle behind, I think it's fair to say. Try and see if we can see what's happened at the back for car 5112. I think that's Stuart Rogers is in the pit lane. More bad luck for the Yorkshireman. He's not had the greatest of times at ACC very recently. He often ends up in the wrong place at the wrong time, the poor man. There's a yellow flag there. Who's that? Car number... Is that car 3 or is that car 43? Struggling to see. I think it might be car number 3. That's one of the rookies. That is Tristan Vizcaino in strife. And that is a very beaten up back end. I suspect that he won't be going much further before he goes into the pit lane, because he's just gone off again. And I suspect both ends of his car are beaten up. Darren Mark Davies, meanwhile, has got to escape the attention of, I think that's Luke Prentice in the Lamborghini on his way back up. Prentice now attacking Darren Mark Davies, going into the tight right-hander. Davies does look like he's got a bit of damage on. I think they're ahead of the... that's the Audi, isn't it? That's the Audi of Aswood finally getting some timings there. We're only 3 minutes into the race. And so let's go and see exactly how that's all shaken out. Adam Sharp has climbed up to 5th. So what has happened to the leader? That's Jan Szczesny's in the lead, and it was Josef Voltman. Where is Josef Voltman? What's happened to the leader? We haven't seen it. Josef Voltman is 14th. What's happened? Oh, goodness me. I think we can see what's happened. He's had more than his fair share of accidents, as I would suggest now. That he's dropping way back. And I would suggest that is him, race over. Pole position earlier, dubbed him as the favourite. We're no more than 4 minutes into the race, and Josef Voltman has got some limping to do to get that car back to the pit lane. That's his race effectively over. Szczesny now in the Mustang. Says he's about a second clear of Christie, although I suspect he might just be stretching his legs. Pospisil following in short order, 1.7 seconds behind as the field starts to spread out a little bit, although Serafino Gabino is all over the back of Adam Sharp. Sharp there holding up what could best be described as a bit of a train, with Clayton, Van der Waal, Glinkin, Colpit, Muller, and possibly even Van der Sloot all within a second. You've got Nikita Chetnazov in 13th, and Josef Voltman, who has gone into the pit lane now. He was 14th. Josef Voltman there retiring effectively from the race. There's a couple more who have followed him into the pit lane. We'll pick that up later on. But you're going back to 13th for the battle for 5th place is Adam Sharp, gently feeling his way into the race. I think he might have. Does it look like he's got a bit of damage on there? He has got a little bit of damage on there. I wonder if that might have come courtesy of the Ferrari, because when you crash here, you're very often a bit of a sitting duck. Still 2.7 seconds, although that does look like it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Szczesny, meanwhile, that's more than 9/10, isn't it, over Christie, Jamie Christie in the McLaren. Second place now ahead of Vaclav Pospisil, and those two are getting away now from Damien de Jong in the Ferrari in 4th place. Could be quite a lonely race for the moment for de Jong, because obviously the two in front are getting away. It does look like the cars from 5th all the way back to, I'm going to say 16th now, are hamstrung a little bit by some damage to Adam Sharp. Let's see if he's still holding on. Yeah, he has got a bit of a gap now in front of him. All very well behaved though, as they head towards the carousel to get about 2/3 of the way round lap 1. All very well behaved, because Gabino has dropped off. We're now through to the final sector, if you like. We've got another 2 minutes of this. So, just as I say that, Sharp off at the carousel. What's happened there? We just got the second part of it, and he's retired. I think there was some damage, more than we were sort of led to believe there, but that's great shame for a couple of the top 6 starters, as first Voltman and now Sharp fall by the wayside. They're all out of the race effectively, and I think that might be Sharp gone. Gabino, meanwhile, now has to contend with what could best be described as a swarm of angry cars all behind him. You've got Van der Waal, Glinking, Kolpitz, Müller, Van der Sloot and Chekmazov all in close attention. Maximilian Morniveg now in what will be 12th place. He's currently on the back of it before you get to Kamil Klak. So plenty of action going on here, and what is probably the most difficult track on the game to race on. Now we're getting towards probably towards the end now of lap 1. Probably about 2 minutes to go as they fire their way through those sweeping turns, left, right again. Have to make sure that you are absolutely on it. Can't take too much here. Every time, especially that left-hander that we've just gone through, you think you can take more than you actually can. A little bit of a dip here, that'll cause some problems on the braking going, especially later on when the tyres are a little bit more fragile. And Szczesny now, it says 1.7 seconds. I'm inclined to believe it, with Pospisil a further one. I don't know what it is about me, but every time we go on to one of the leaders on lap 1, Jamie Christie, the latest in a line of lead car drivers to crash and have issues on lap 1, and that might be the Scotsman's race effectively over. That is a lot of damage, heavy into the wall there. It looks like he was catching a slide, so the car brakes left, he turns left to correct that, steers into it, and it grips, and that is going to be bye-bye, lights out London for his race, I'm afraid to say. He'll say second. He's currently still third, fourth place, isn't he? He's third, isn't he, behind Pospisil at this moment in time, but I don't think he'll stay there for very long. Szczesny, meanwhile, now has a real gap over second place, which will be Pospisil. Looks like it's going to be about 3.5 seconds. Here you can see De Jong, I think, is now getting past Jamie Christie, who is in strife in that McLaren. He won't be going much further because that car is heavily damaged. And certainly if he does, he'll be going on at a fair old disadvantage. Szczesny now crossing the line. We'll try and see if we can get the times over that line. We're nearly 10 minutes in already, 8.5 minutes in, and we're only just completing lap 1. Here's Szczesny now in the Mustang. He's completed his first lap, and it will be Pospisil to come in because Christie at this moment in time, he's not going to be... See, Pospisil already 7.5 seconds back. If you Szczesny in that Mustang, you kind of think about maybe sort of driving within yourself to protect this, because if you keep it on the island, you've possibly got this. De Jong is in third place, as Christie does come into the pit lane to repair that car. So let's give you a bit of a run now. Most of them will be over the line. See, look at that gaggle. There's still so many. We've still got 30 seconds or so before they cross the line, with Szczesny now going into the Dunlop hairpin. It's amazing, really, isn't it, what field spread does around here. So let's see now as they all cross the line. Christie currently 13th. I suspect that will drop as Luke Prentice now all the way up from he was 29th, wasn't he, on the grid? Now is he? He's 14th. Is he just going off? That's at the full curve. Okay, so he's made up a load of places. What about Jake Hanley? He's currently got some attention from Alberto Aragonés, one of those that started out of position at the back. Jake Hanley goes to the inside, but it's not enough, is it? It is, because Aragonés goes slightly too deep going into the Dunlop hairpin. I suspect that is when and not if the Mustang can get a run on what looks like a damaged Aston Martin. The Aston Martin gamely fighting as he did last week in race 2, gets a little bit loose onto the grass, and that might be the opportunity for Aragonés. It is indeed. He gets over in front of the Aston Martin. That's 15th place for Alberto Aragonés. There's Christie still in the pit lane now. That is a long stop, isn't it? That's cost him, I reckon, 2 minutes once you get on with everything there. There is Van der Waal, I think Michel Van der Waal and Darren Mark Davies also having early dramas in the pit lane there. We can see now Pospisil still 7.5 seconds behind Szczesny in the Ford Mustang. They call that McLaren. There's one thing it is not. There's a stop-go penalty for car 420. I wonder if that might be it's Darren Mark Davies. So his misery goes on, the Welshman in the Mustang, and he'll have to come back for a stop-and-go penalty. That'll cost him another minute around here, which is, especially if you're trying to hold on to something, which I suggest with him being where he is, he'll be looking forwards rather than backwards, is not ideal. Here's Szczesny now, about a third of the way through the second lap. It will feel odd saying that with only 12 minutes in, but we've got Szczesny now 7.5 seconds at the moment clear of Václav Pospisil, with De Jong a further 3.7 seconds back. De Jong has got company. I reckon that gap might have grown because you've got Cabino, Van der Waal Clayton and I think Glinkin's a little bit further back. Glinkin is within this, so Glinkin's got past Clayton, and here he is lining up Damien van der Waal. Van der Waal puts him towards the grass. Glinkin keeps his foot in it and wisely doesn't try again. Now he's got to hold off the attention of Josh Clayton in the Aston Martin. Glinkin did well to gather that up, actually, to be honest with you, because as soon as you get onto the grass here, very often a one-way ticket to the barriers. Josh Clayton now is in 7th place, so as they go through the first time, so that's righted itself. Pospisil, meanwhile, has taken half a second out of Szczęsny, but has got 4 seconds extra, so it's now up to 7.8 over Damien de Jong. Gabino, meanwhile, Van der Waal, Glinkin and Clayton in short order, with Stefan Muller a bit further back, 5.5 seconds. Don't really know how to read that, to be honest. It might well be they'll be catching those, and we'll see that probably in about 3 minutes' time, with Lee Colpitts in 9th, ahead of Robert van der Sloot and Nikita Chetnazov. Maxi Warneveg is just half a second behind in 12th, and look at that, Luke Prentice in 13th, with Aragonis in short order behind him, as the two slightly quicker drivers, some that you would expect to be a little bit further up the grid, to slowly start making their way through, as I suspect that we will get plenty of drama here. We'll stay with Serafino Gabino, who is under attack now from Van der Waal. Van der Waal thinks better of it, going into the right-hander, leads immediately to the sharp left-hander there, so you don't really want to be getting yourself side by side unless you know it's a sure thing. It's going to be a lot of that, because with how this track's laid out, with sort of curves and little kinks, it's very difficult to get alongside really until you're either going into, there's a couple of corners just before the carousel, or probably the dirting herb right round the back of the lap. So it's going to be a bit of a waiting game here. It's almost like Monaco without the buildings, really, in terms of how difficult and how narrow it is in terms of passing here. You really have to get everything right, and I suspect that a lot of those are going to be finding that out behind the ever-competent Daniel de Jong. De Jong in 3rd place at the moment, courtesy of an excellent qualifying where he just got the car round, and that is so much the secret here. Just get the car round and make sure that you're not too slow, which is exactly what he's done here. But he's under attack now from Gabino. Gabino, I think, fancies run at 3rd place. Is he going to? He has a little look, but I don't think he's going to get there. Now that compromises him for Van der Waal, because Van der Waal, any little misstep from Gabino and Van der Waal will be there. You've got Van der Waal there ahead of Glinkin and Clayton. That still stayed status quo as is, as we now go into the 2nd timing beam, so we'll start to see gaps. Pospisil now 8 seconds behind Szczęsny, although I think Szczęsny will start to stretch that lead in the Mustang in going down the back straight. So you've got Pospisil now, he's 10 seconds clear, so he's comfortable in 2nd place, and the one man who's definitely not comfortable is de Jong, who's got Gabino all over him like a cheap suit. Wheeler's got to play this smart here, because if he goes and tries to go in Harry-Carry, he will come a crop. He'll probably take a couple of cars with him. He's got to play this smart. That Porsche's got excellent traction, so as long as he doesn't get frustrated, he should have a chance going out of the right-hander down the Dirtinger, because of how well that Porsche gets off corners. So he's got to play this smart for Gabino. He's got to make sure that whatever he does it safely and securely, as there was a mini mistake there from Van der Waal, not enough to let Glinkin through. That's Ivan Glinkin in the Lexus, vindicated in his choice, isn't he, in the Lexus, with excellent straight line speed and a reliable car, I think, around the rest of the lap as well. You kind of know what you're going to get from it. So you've got Glinkin in 6th. He's now coming under a bit of attack from Josh Clayton. That is, who's that now with another 12, with number 12, that is with a stop-go penalty. We'll just take a quick look there. That is Simon Dunn. So another man whose race has come to an end relatively early. You've got Josef Voltman, the pole sitter, I will remind you, 36th in the pits because of a crash when leading. And then you've got Yannick Gerling, a fellow German, in the pits as well. He's 37th. Tristan Vizcaino as well, quite far back, with I think fellow drivers that were affected were Camille Clack. He's a little bit further back as well. He was 14th at one point on that one. Charles van der Waal and Stuart Rogers, who was the first really to hit strife in the early running. So let's go back up and see exactly now how close this all is. You've got Clayton at the back of it that we're watching now. We're going to go to the front with De Jong, because De Jong is going to be the man who I think is going to have to get some elbows out here. Gabino a little bit loose off of the mini carousel. Now they're going towards the Dirtinger, and this is something that we're going to need to stick by, because the Porsche, great off of corners, it's going to need to stay in the slipstream. It's a bit of a messy exit. That might cost him half a second or so by the time you get to the end. And it's now Damien van der Waal, one of the quicker drivers in the Ferrari. What can he do about Serafino Gabino in the Minardi nicknamed Porsche? He's gaining now. Van der Waal, is it going to be enough? Because you're going to start to go downhill, and that'll provide a bit of a spike for both drivers now. Serafino Gabino leaves some space. Van der Waal going down the inside. Is he going to make it stick? They're going to have to sort this out by the time they get to the corner, and he is. Gabino backs out, and that is another place for Damien van der Waal on his recovery drive. Excellent move from the Flying Dutchman, and he's going to be on to his compatriot Daniel de Jong in no time at all, I would have thought. So de Jong now in third place. Is he going to come under threat? Now, he is almost immediately. We're going to stick with this, because Van der Waal in the Ferrari is going to try and see if he can sneak past. It looks like he's going to the inside, Barrichello style. Oh, that was always going to end in tears like that. Yeah, Van der Waal, I think, will probably look back on that and not be proud, but he spins off Daniel de Jong. And, well, he's lost now, I think, 5 places. I hope he kept the car largely intact. It does look like there's a little bit of damage there. But de Jong, he goes down the inside. It's never really on for me in terms of he's trying to force a gap that's not there. I think he'd be better off and safer going around the outside, because de Jong was always going to clamp that, and he was always going to close that, as was his right. And where the track suddenly juts out, there's always a little mini gap, but you think it's there when you're racing. It very rarely is. Van der Waal's going to scamper up the road now. He's got Gabino for company for the moment, with Ivan Glinkin in 6th, ahead of Josh Clayton. That's Josh Clayton in the Aston Martin now, getting very close to the back of Ivan Glinkin. Is he going to have a look now into the Schumacher S's? He pulls to the inside, but he's going to have to get it done on the brakes, and the Lexus straight line speed wins out on that occasion. You've got Muller now, who's just ahead, isn't he? That is de Jong. So where are we going here? That's de Jong, who is, I think, just ahead there of Lee Kolpitz. Lee Kolpitz has Nikita Chetmazov for company for what will be 9th place at this moment in time. And there is another man with a slightly beaten up front end. So Chetmazov has a real run going into the NGK chicane. He's going to have to go around the outside. He's going to have to get it done on the brakes. Wisely backs out as Kolpitz there lives to fight another day, going on to the Nordschleiffe. You've got there further back, where are we? Last hit strife, because there's a couple of cars that aren't appearing as they were before. I think Luke Prentice has had issues. He was 14th at one point, and he was close together with Aragonis. I wonder if the two have gotten together, because Aragonis, no, doesn't look like he has. Aragonis looks fairly intact, but look how far back he is. Talked about this earlier. You've got Aragonis, he's starting his lap just as the lead drivers finish the Grand Prix lap and are off and all the way onto the Nordschleife. So you think someone as quick as Aragonis is, he's possibly, doesn't look like that from the gaps, but he's possibly about a minute back, over a minute back, because I know it's a slightly shorter track. But when those starting, and when the lead car, which is Jan Cihetny in the Mustang, is getting away as he is, when he's getting on, and he's well into the Nordschleife, you've got Aragonis who hasn't yet got off the Grand Prix loop. Or is it the loop? I'm going to call it the loop. The Grand Prix loop for Alberto Aragonis. That just tells you how much about field spread and how crucial it is here. You've got Maximilian Moniweg. Hang on. I think Aragonis is the other man in strife. We're going to see now as they come around. It's going to catch you out round here, because Aragonis he was 13th, but he's nowhere near 13th, is he? That's Maximilian Moniweg, who is onto the loop. So I suspect that Luke Prentice and Aragonis may have come to blows. We're now having another look at the top 5. So yeah, that's as it is. So Daniel de Jong has rejoined in 8th. It looks intact. I suspect the tyres might have seen better days, but the car does look intact, so you should still be able to get a really good result from there. Obviously, it's not quite 3rd place. You've got Van der Waal, who's now trying to stretch his legs away from Gabino and Ivan Glinkin in the Lexus. with Josh Clayton for company, who's just picking up some pieces at this moment in time in the Aston. Then you're 4.5 seconds ahead of Muller, and then, you know, you've got then De Jong, Kolpitz and Chetmazov following in short order. We're going to try and see then exactly how this has gone. So you've got Gordon Brown's now 13th ahead of Kalugin, Keller and Williams in 16th. Aragonis currently is 18th, isn't he? So yeah, there has been an issue. So you've got Daniel Starkloff in the BMW. He's currently 17th ahead of Michael Ossel and Chris Gedman, with Trevor Mendes rounding out the top 20. So we'll find out exactly what's gone on there a little bit later on, no doubt. We're nearly halfway into the race already, aren't we? It's been 22 minutes of non-stop action. You know, around the Nordschleiffe, drama is very rarely far away. So we go and see now. Here's Jan Cichotny. Everything looks all relatively serene, doesn't it, in the Mustang? One thing I will say, the camera angle's not doing us any favours in terms of trying to see the cars that go over the various crests and hills, but Cichotny, it looks pretty much snooker table smooth, doesn't it, for the pole, who's not been seen in FRL before, but certainly making a good first impression. We've got Vaclav Pospisil, who looks safe and secure in second. He's keeping the gap now between about 8 to 10 seconds, currently 9 seconds for the Czech, and he's got a decent gap over Damien van der Waal. Van der Waal in the Ferrari, who's got slightly wide there, but I think he's now extended his lead sufficiently to not be under threat for the moment anyway from Serafino Cabino, who is under threat, immediate threat, from Ivan Glinkin. Half a second back with Clayton there, just missing the carousel there, but that won't do him too much harm because I suspect he's quick enough to catch those in front of him. They've got away a little bit from Muller, with De Jong now 3 seconds back from him. And there's been some more strife, I think, for Nikita Chetmazov. Nikita Chetmazov was 10th, and he's lost a place to Jake Hanley, the ever-dependable Jake Hanley, who's now getting closer and closer towards the back of Lee Kolpitz. Lee Kolpitz is still in 9th place, still looks safe and secure there in the BMW. There has been some strife for Nikita Chetmazov if he's dropped to 11th, dropped that far back. Going now, hopefully, towards the long straight. They're coming up to it now, aren't they? Well, relatively speaking, probably got another 30 seconds or so to get there. You've got Cichotny now in the army green, bottle green, almost Mustang. He's currently about 10 seconds clear, isn't he? So he looks all very serene indeed. You've got then Pospisil a further 10 seconds, so he's lost a little bit of time to Van der Waal. I think Van der Waal's more stretching his legs and showing his base, because he was, I think, probably pound for pound the quickest driver in practice. Didn't show it in qualifying. I know Voltman set that excellent lap time, but Van der Waal has been pound for pound one of the quicker drivers over the course of the last season. So from there, it's Cabino, who's still got company, isn't he, with Ivan Glinkin. Glinkin in the Lexus. You would think if he gets a decent exit going onto the dirty goal, which is where Cichotny is now, having lapped, I think that's Vizcaino, isn't it, the car number 3. Cichotny is there. They're now coming onto the Dirtingoer, so I suspect if Glinkin does get, coming out of the mini carousel, not his favourite corner in the Lexus, gets a decent exit, that car could be lining up Cabino, who's been passed once in the Porsche, not the fastest down the straight. I suspect he could be lining up the Italian. So we'll stick with this because it looks like a large gap now, but you watch as they gain. You've got Josh Clayton as well following in behind. He's going to be earning a lovely double stream here, isn't he? As Clayton now settling in. I don't think he's going to pass the Lexus. The Lexus is too fast, but is the Lexus going to do anything about the Porsche? See that gap getting smaller. Don't think it's going to be enough here, though, as they go down the dip, where they start then preparing for more corners. So I suspect the Lexus is not quite going to get there. The Porsche's going to hold on, but he didn't want that to be too much longer, because look at how much he's monstered the Porsche. Now, if he can get a decent exit out of it, he might still have a bit of a chance going into... I say if he can get a decent exit, he doesn't get a decent entry, he spins. As soon as I say that, Ivan Glinkin spins himself off, and what was going to be potentially third place and a really strong result, he's now stranded, isn't he, Ivan Glinkin, as he rejoins well, to be fair to him. Ivan Glinkin there shows you exactly how you should rejoin. He's going to rejoin 8th, isn't he, because De Jong's going to pass him. De Jong's got him, and Lee Kolpitz now having a run down the inside, so it could get worse for the Lexus driver as he is currently 9th place, about a tenth of a second behind. Is he going to hang it round the outside into turn 1? He's late on the brakes, very daring on the brakes. Is he going to get it stopped? The short answer is no. Colpitts is going to leave him room. He does leave him room, and it gets worse for Ivan Glinkin. He spins there. He left himself really tight to the inside there, and as soon as he put the power down, the rear end spins him around and puts him just out of the barriers. But that again is more woes for Ivan Glinkin. He's going to drop, I think, to about 12th place there. Really bad lap for Ivan Glinkin there, losing out not only on a chance for a podium, but now finds himself outside of the top 10. So we go back now to Van der Waal, who's got a decent gap over Gavino. Gavino's now got more company because he's got Josh Clayton, who's fundamentally a slightly quicker driver than Glinkin, even if he's not in a car that's as fast down the straights. But I think the Aston Martin's going to give Gavino a really good going over as he goes down now to finish the Grand Prix, the new Grand Prix, I should say, section, and go on to the Nordschleiffe. We'll pick up the leader just in a moment once this is settled and onto the Nordschleiffe, because I don't see any passing there. Clayton, a sensible driver by and large. Is he going to have a look at? No, he got a decent exit off of the chicane, but no luck there as Gabino covered the inside well enough. Here's Szczesny now halfway into the race and 3.5 laps in, so I suspect that we'll be looking at, I would say, probably about 8 laps. 8 laps, is that? Does that make sense? Yeah, it'll be about 8 laps, I would have thought, which for an hour's racing seems very, very short, doesn't it? And then you realise exactly where you are. Václav Pospisil now has regained a little bit of a gap over Damien Van der Waal. Van der Waal still 12 seconds back, and Pospisil now in kind of a league of his own, really, in second place. He's not going to catch the leader. Szczesny's got too much pace, I think, ideally. And Van der Waal now, he's got to get away from drivers behind, because I suspect the stewards might be coming back to haunt him regards that collision with de Jong. You've got Stefan Muller now in 6th. Doing a decent job. He's not really troubling those in front. Doesn't need to be honest with you. There is Stefan Muller just keeping himself out of trouble. De Jong now in 7th, so he's regained one of those places courtesy of Ivan Glinkin. You've got Glinkin now, who is currently 9th behind. No, it looks like he might be a little bit further back. Oh, no, he's 12th, isn't he? Because we saw him spin off. So you've got Lee Colpitts in 8th, Jake Hanley in 9th, ahead of Nikita Chepmazov in the Lexus. You've got Maximilian Morniveg, he'll be 11th. With Ivan Glinkin, I think he's slotted himself into 12th because he's not behind Gordon Brown. Gordon Brown in 13th. Recovering a bit from a slightly more difficult start. The Scotsman there got caught up in a lot of the field spread issues that I mentioned at the top of the stream. Gordon Brown is now gently working his way through, and I suspect he might be looking at the top 10 and thinking, yeah, do you know what, we can still do this. You've got now, following him, it's Christian Kelleher, the consistent Hungarian, where things now do get just that bit of space now with Simon Williams in the Aston, who was a bit unlucky again last week, had a few dramas, certainly in race 2. He's currently running in 15th ahead of Michael Ossel, who's further 15 seconds back. There's the recovering Jamie Christie with Alberto Aragonesis. It says 6.5 seconds back. I don't think that's the case. I think that's fairly old, isn't it? As they go onto the Nordschleife, they'll be through the timing beam any moment now. With Christie, he's got past, so I think Ossel might have made a mistake. See, that or Ossel's very much part of the self-preservation society, because I think he just let Christie through, didn't he? Christie was looking very racy, and I suspect that Ossel's just trying to get to the end, bless him. So you've got Aragonesis, who will possibly be past him in short order, because that Mustang coupled with the driver is one of the fastest combinations in Formula Racing League. Now, does he get past here? No, Ossel holds on for the moment, but it's probably a matter of when and not if. It's car number 7 clears a stop go. That's Graham Didsbury in the Ferrari, who's had dramas a little bit earlier on with Darren Mark Davies still to serve a stop go penalty. Mind you, you have to serve within 3 laps, which is normally a lot shorter than what you would find here. As Aragonesis has a look, does he? No, not quite. Thinks better of it. I suspect that's wise. Patience is the name of the game for Alberto Aragonesis, who's currently 17th, when he would have been expected to be a lot higher. Is he going to try and nail him here? I don't think there's the space. It's all about, with this track, it is a bit like, as I said earlier, Monaco without the buildings, because of just how tight and narrow it is. As soon as you make a mistake, you've got the barriers there waiting to welcome you in, let's say. So if you get on the marbles, if you get on the grass, you've got a one-way ticket out of the race. As Aragonesis does look down the inside. That's very opportunistic. Is he going to make it stick? Ostel's going to give him space, but he's not going to back down. Ostel, I think, yields. Yes, he does. As Aragonesis there gets the drop. He was slightly ahead going into that left-hander, and that is 16th place for Alberto Aragonesis, and off he goes after Jamie Christie, who I suspect will be having some bother in the not too distant future. Now, as we go, let's see if there's any other battles ahead. It's still Josh Clayton trying to pass. No, not trying, succeeding in passing Serafino Gabino. We didn't quite catch that because we were watching another battle, but Serafino Gabino has been relieved of 4th place, the Italian in the Porsche, and Josh Clayton is Gone gone. If he can just get away now, start to build a gap, I think that's going to be 4th place locked down. I don't know that he'll catch Van der Waal, but that is another place gained for Josh Clayton in the Aston Martin. Opportunistic move from the Brit, who had a very strong showing, especially in race 1, part of that famous battle between himself, Sharp, Prentice and Harvey last week. And it's another clean move from the Aston Martin driver now as he gets off and on his way, trying to see if he can do anything about that podium. So you've got there, Gabino now should probably settle in because Muller's not giving them any bother behind. So Gabino still looking at a really strong 5th place for the Italian, which will be certainly no mean feat if he can keep it on the island. We're over halfway into the race and we're now going to the back straight. Let's just see here. Check in with Jan Cijetny. He's still leading the race, the pole, as he goes on to the Ford Mustang's favourite part of the track, the long straight. Down the Dirtinghoer now. And he's still got that gap, hasn't he? I think he's managing it because Pospisil has caught a little bit, but it's 9 seconds over what will be, I think, 4 laps to go, 3 laps to go. We've got, about 8 minutes to lap, so it'll be 4 laps once they get past here. So then we've got Damien van der Waal. He's 10 seconds back, although he can see he's within sight of Pospisil, if you can see there. Pospisil's got a back marker. I think that might be Jurgen Verith in the Audi in front of him. But Van der Waal has got a little. He's got a little bit of hope, as he can see just about Václav Pospisil, but it's going to be a tall order from there for the Dutchman. You've got then, it's Clayton obviously who's gained, it looks to me anyway, about a second and a half over Gabino, the straight, not the Porsche's friend. And I think with the driver as well, Clayton usually seen a little bit higher up than Gabino. I think that should be him gone, provided he keeps it on the island. Now let's see if there's any further battle. I suspect the battle might be Aragonesis, and as soon as I say the battle might be Aragonesis, it's not. Aragonesis just goes past Jamie Christie. Christie, I think, might have made an error because it's not usually a passing place, even for a Mustang on a McLaren. But I think that's Aragonesis again gaining through. Now he's got 30 seconds to find on Christian Keller, which might take him a little while. But there's the carrot. Christian Keller, 30 seconds or so ahead of that battle, and I suspect might be under threat towards the end of the race. That's something that we'll keep an eye on a little bit later on. We've got now Jake Handley all over the back of Lee Colpitts. He's going to go around the outside. A bit of deja vu from before for Colpitts. Colpitts leaves him some space, leaves him a lot of space. Handley doesn't spin, so he's done better than Glinkin. Glinkin is pitted, so I think his race is over. He must have hit some strife. Says that Josh Clayton has pitted. Now, why would that be? Well, I can see damage. Don't tell me I put another commentator's curse on him. Well, he's pitted, so I wonder if he didn't put enough fuel in. If he is, there's a bit of a clanger from Josh Clayton, who was on for 4th place, and I suspect is now going to be on for something that's more akin to 14th. Jake Handley has not passed Lee Colpitts. Colpitts holding his own very much in the BMW and staying in 8th place. Oh, well, that's a real shame. I wonder if we'll get a few more of that. So that won't be 8th place. That'll be 7th for Lee Colpitts and Jake Handley that they're fighting over now. Handley tries again going into the Schumacher S's. Not quite this time, sensibly backs out. But he is going to work over Lee Colpitts. Tries to dip a nose in there. That might be just the different lines that they take. You can take different lines depending on the car. As they finish now the Formula One, the new Formula One layout, and head on to the Nordschleiffe shortly. And I think Václav Pospisil has hit dramas because He's only 4 seconds now ahead of Daniel van der Waal. Van der Waal in the Ferrari looks like he might have a battle a bit sooner than we thought. There's Nikita Chekmazov has a stop-go penalty, I suspect, for speeding in the pit lane for the Lexus. Where is Josh Clayton gone? Well, he's still 6th at the moment, so we'll see exactly what happens when they get to the timing means, of which they're not that far away from, because Pospisil, having lost that time, is they're not that far away from telling us exactly where they're at now. So, a bit difficult, really, when you've got to wait 2 minutes to find out what's gone on, but I think they have just broken the timing being now. Suzhetny just coming out of this right-hander, so that's the key. So we'll go back to Pospisil shortly to go round this right-hander, and then we'll know the extent of the damage, so to speak, because that is Pospisil there 17.5 seconds back, and Van der Waal 3 seconds back. So this might be something to watch in the latter part of the race. The battle for second place might just be on. I'm going to go back now to Gabino, because he's now coming out of that right-hander 14 seconds back, and Josh Clayton, yeah, a mile back, isn't he? So you've got Stefan Muller in 5th, and then from there it's going to be Damien de Jong, isn't it? Damien de Jong 6th, yeah, 6 seconds back. So this is where we're going to see exactly how far he's fallen back. Lee Colpitts still has the ever impatient Jake Hanley all behind him, all safe enough from the 2 British drivers. 0.2 of a second separated. I think this could go all the way, with Colpitts digging in like an opening test batsman in the face of the attack from Jake Hanley. So that's for 7th and 8th. Maximilian Morniveg is 6 seconds back, looking to pick up any scraps. Then you've got Ivan Glinkin in the Lexus, and this is, I suspect now, for 11th place. Him and Nikita, that's Jamie Christie behind, isn't it? We have further dramas. I suspect we might well have had further dramas. Here's Christian Keller. Let's just see here exactly what's going on. Yeah, that's a long way back, isn't it, for Clayton? So I would expect that he's lost quite a bit of time. Let's just see here. Is he 11th now? I wasn't that far out. So you've got Maximilian Morniveg in 9th. You've got Gordon Brown in 10th. And then it's Josh Clayton in 11th. So he's come out ahead of Christian Keller, with further issues for Ivan Glinkin. Ivan Glinkin hasn't come through, nor has Nikita Chekmazov. So Aragonesis is now up into 13th, with, I suspect, Jamie Christie to come through into 14th. So he's a minute behind. I doubt that very highly. He's just coming up the right-hander, so he'll go up to 14th. You'll see on the left-hand side, 15th behind Ivan Glinkin. So Glinkin is dropped all the way back to 14th, and then we wait to try and find out how the rest of this shakes out. We're going to go back now to the battle for 7th. We're going to look at League. They're almost as one, aren't they? They're going to be 2 tenths apart for a little while. Lee Colpitts there with certainly a busy final third of the race. We do go into 20 minutes left. There'll be probably 3 or 4 minutes of overtime with how the race shapes out. And that, as Jake Hanley, does he try and go around the outside? He does. Is he going to hang it in there? He is. Colpitts leaves him space, and that might have been the gentlemanly thing to do, but I think that's going to seal Colpitts' fate. Colpitts loses out, I think, to Jake Hanley. Hanley does get the move done. Excellent racing between the 2 drivers, and I suspect that'll be that in terms of, provided Hanley does keep it on the road. We've said that before. I think that's him gone, because Colpitts has been not the quickest. I think that damage is affecting him, but excellent racing from the 2 drivers. Very, very clean indeed, and that's the example that we want to see here. As further issues there, Stefan Muller, I think, has got Daniel de Jong. De Jong now 1.7 seconds. I think that was already the way it was, but de Jong 1.7 seconds back, as Van der Waal has caught the back of Vaclav Pospisil. So we're going to stay with this for a little while, because they're approaching the Dersinger within about 30 seconds or so. And here is Vaclav Pospisil. He's got a bit of a problem now, hasn't he? Because what was a very safe second place is now looking anything but in the advance of Daniel van der Waal, Demian van der Waal, sorry, who he's not quite 3 tenths back, but he's not an awful lot further back, is he? I suspect this might now be the battle at the front that we stick with for the moment. So as they go through the complex now, This is the bit where it gets really difficult because the tyres are starting to go. It's bumpy. There's a lot of downhill braking points. I think there's at one point a mini jump going into this complex here. Then you have to turn it hard right. So you've got sweeping right, then left, then you brake down the hill, I think. Then you turn a really tough and hard right before then going back over to the mini carousel. I think I might have that slightly wrong because that's probably happened before. But there's a mini carousel where Pospisil is going to look to maximise everything in terms of traction that Porsche has. Whether or not that works, we will find out. But Van der Waal, who's got the fastest lap, will be looking to get this done quickly. Pospisil already goes to break the toe. That's not bad, not a bad thought, but this is 2 miles of straight. So unfortunately, Van der Waal is going to now get the magnets on, isn't he? Down the straight we go. Van der Waal gaining. The Porsche's going to bottom out any time now in terms of straight line speed. Is it going to be enough for the Ferrari who's got? He's not quite going to get there, is he? As they pull now down the hill. This is where the corners start. He does pull out, but I think it's going to be a lost cause. Pospisil holds his ground for the moment, and Van der Waal slots in now as they go into the final complex. Szczęsny, meanwhile, has crossed the line, so we'll find out exactly then what the gap is between leader and second place battle. As Van der Waal now is going to try again going into turn 1. We've had dramas with Van der Waal here before. Now, is Pospisil going to fall victim the same way? He isn't. He stays to the outside. I suspect they'll have the high ground going into second corner. And Van der Waal is not close enough to mount an attack. Although he very nearly goes into the back of Pospisil. I suspect that might have been to scare him. But the Porsche there with its traction, excellent off of turn 2. And that's another threat averted for the moment. I'll go back a little bit to the battle for 7th just to see if that is still as it is now. There's a McLaren there that's had some strife, isn't it? It's Daniel de Jong has got Stefan Muller now half a second back. We've missed that, but can we see? Yeah, Handley's now got 3.5 seconds over Colpitts, so that's done. And Maximilian Morniveg is only a second or so back from Lee Colpitts. Morniveg in the McLaren, so it'll be difficult for him to pass. But Morniveg there in a strong 9th place as we've got now. Who's that coming back out of the pits? Is that that's the Audi? I think that's Joachim Verret in the Audi. It's been a disappointing day. That might be for the German. It's either him, yeah, it's Verret. I'm looking at it because I think Dunn's gone a while ago. Van der Waal now. Is he mounting an attack on Pospisil? The answer to that question is no, not yet. Pospisil's got half a second on the Dutchman as they go towards then the endurance layout, so to speak, the Nordschleife, the old Formula 1 track, largely untouched in terms of surfacing, so that's why it's so bumpy and so difficult for the drivers. But that's not going to be Pospisil's concern. Pospisil's concern is more going to be what's in his mirrors, because that green Ferrari is looking very imposing indeed, isn't it, Van der Waal? One of the quicker drivers around here in that car, and he's now menacing Pospisil in what is still an unfamiliar Porsche for the Czech driver, and I suspect that that's going to be keeping Pospisil awake. Let's say that for the next 15 plus minutes. We're half a minute behind the leader. He is still here. We'll switch to him to make sure that you all know what he looks like when he does cross the line. Jan Szczęsny in the Mustang. It's a fairly easy Tuesday night drive, isn't it, for the pole, as he puts himself in pole in this race. Nearly half a minute clear now, 5.5 laps in. Pospisil now, they're side by side. I can't believe I missed that. Pospisil has just lost out to Damien van der Waal, so they were coming down the straight. I suspect the Ferrari might have just bullied Pospisil into a mistake and has got the run now on the longest, the straight part of the track. Straight part of the Nordschleife, where it just sort of evens out. It's the one big long acceleration zone, and Pospisil there has lost out. So what was a comfortable second place a couple of laps ago is now 3rd place. Relatively secure, because I don't think Gabino's going to have quite the same impact that Van der Waal had. But Van der Waal is in the Ferrari now going to start chasing after Szczęsny. Szczęsny might have to re-engage here, because Van der Waal was certainly very quick earlier on. It's 23 seconds. It's a really tall order. He's going to need to go at possibly 8.5, 9 a lap, given where he passed him. But is it on now? Is the chase for victory on? We'll find out in a couple of sectors' time, so more like 5 minutes. As Daniel de Jong who was fifth, has now dropped behind both Jake Hanley and Stefan Müller. Stefan Müller sort of just by default has ended up in fifth place here in that Mustang, which does look like a little bit beaten up, doesn't it? It certainly looks like he's been in the wars. Jake Hanley, another man with not a clean, not an original condition Aston Martin. As Müller goes off, does he keep it on the track in time? He does get back on the track. They're side by side. Don't know whether he's led him through there because he has got problems. And Jake Hanley, what was seventh place just a moment ago, is now fifth place for the Aston Martin driver, who just keeps picking up these results. He's just going to keep the car on the track, and I fancy he might hold on to that. De Jong and Müller both struggling here now, with Lee Colpitts and Maximilian Morneweg following in short order here. So this, what will be a battle for, I suspect, sixth place, I think. I think fifth is probably going to be out as long as Hanley keeps it on the island, which he is now getting away just about the Aston Martin. The battle for sixth place is probably going to be where it's at now, with De Jong, Colpitts and Müller all very close together, with De Jong having recently hit strife. Yeah, the car does look like it's been beaten up. Mind you, that's not an original condition either, is it? The Aston Martin does look like it was getting a little bit tail-endy there, the V8 Vantage, replacing the very successful V12 from 2013, all those years ago. Now, let's see if there's any kickback for Pospisil and Van der Waal. The answer to that is no. Van der Waal looks like he's just about stretched his lead enough over the Czech driver. We're starting to get somewhere near the timing slot. In fact, we have. Szczęsny's just gone past the timing slot. We'll start to find out exactly the scale of the task for Van der Waal should he wish to take victory. As Szczęsny now, as I said earlier, might have to re-engage. His Van der Waal will stay with them whilst they go through the timing beat, just going into the carousel. What's the gap? The gap is 22.7 seconds. He's going to need more than that. We'll find out whether or not he can realistically try and close that down, although he hasn't really shook off Vaclav Pospisil, has he? So Pospisil still staying about a second back in third place. I suspect this is probably going to be the battle. I suspect that the leader Szczęsny is going to have more than enough in hand. Gabino now 20 seconds off the pace in fourth. He'll be relatively safe and secure there. But as we go now to fifth place, that's Jake Hanley in the Aston Martin, and he gets through the... Oh, that doesn't look very tight at all. It works. It works. The Aston's quite good at that type of cornering. It's quite good at cornering in that manner. But he's fifth now, a second or so ahead of De Jong, with Müller 1.7 seconds back, and everybody else, Colpitts and Morneweg, trying to be seventh behind Müller. Now we've got Josh Clayton, who's got back into the top 10 at the expense of Gordon Brown somewhere around here. We'll have to find out what happened with Josh Clayton, because it just seems like a run-of-the-mill pit stop. So I do wonder whether or not he had a little bit of trouble with his fuel, whether he might have under-fueled. Anyway, we'll find that out a little bit later on. Gordon Brown now is having to hold off the attentions, belatedly, of Alberto Aragonés, who's got past Christian Kelleher here, unseen by us, as it is a lot of the other mistakes appear to have been. As Aragonés is now up into the top 12, we'll find out now whether this might be the battle to watch. I think it's probably going to be seventh place for the moment. Aragonés is 17 seconds behind. You'd have to say 2 laps to go. That's probably doable, to be honest with you. That's probably doable for a man of, and I mean that in the absolutely nicest way possible, to Gordon Brown. Aragonés is in that Mustang. He's an absolute machine. Szczęsny now down the Dirtinghoer, so we'll find out whether it's 1 or whether it's 2 laps that we've got. I suspect it's more like 2, because it's not going to take him a minute to complete this last part. Now, with 10 minutes to go, I suspect that we're going to 8 laps now, as Szczęsny gently strokes his way through in the Mustang. It's all looking fairly serene, isn't it, for the pole? As he just doesn't take too much risk. He must surely be driving within himself. You can't really be flat out at the moment when you've got the gap that he's got. Crossing the line now, we'll start to find out exactly what the timing beam says in the scale of the gap between himself and Van der Waal. Van der Waal has not shaken off Vaclav Pospisil. So whatever issues were plaguing Pospisil before, they've certainly righted themselves. So these two now go through the final complex down the front straight, and we should now see exactly how far off the lead he is and to what extent the Szczęsny can relax. It's 23.2 seconds, with Pospisil now 0.7 of a second behind in third place. I suspect this will probably be all the she wrote. The Porsche's a bit straight line challenged. Let's say that. I don't know if that's the official way to say it, but that's certainly how we're going to say that now. It's great off the corner, but top end is a bit of a problem now, as Gabino just crossing the line now in a world of his own in fourth place. I think it's something that he'll be rightly quite pleased with if he keeps it on the island. He's 23.5 seconds back, but he's got a really good gap over Jake Hanley, who in turn is building a really good gap over De Jong, Muller and Colpitts and co. So there is Hanley, 12.5 seconds back. De Jong, 5 seconds back ahead of Muller and Colpitts and Morniveg, and they're all separated by less than 4 seconds. That, I think, is a lapped car. I think that is done, isn't it? That might be done in the Audi, and it looks like his race is done. In front of Josh Clayton. I was about to say, is that another incident for Josh Clayton? It is not, but he's got a relatively safe 10th place, provided he doesn't do anything silly, with Gordon Brown not really troubling him. But 11th place from where he was on the grid is something that will be quite satisfactory for him, provided he keeps it, because here is Alberto Aragonés. Now, it was 17.5 seconds at the last timing beam. It is now, well, we'll wait to find out, but I suspect this might be something to keep an eye on at the back. So, yeah, it's 9.5 seconds. I suspect that'll be all closed up together, I reckon, within a lap, within the end of the lap. So, De Jong, oh, God, I can see why he's having trouble, because that car does look beaten up. He must have had an off somewhere. Didn't look like any issues from when he had contact with one. Well, we'll find out if that is the case. But De Jong in that Ferrari looks a little bit dog-eared, doesn't it, at the front and at the back. Looks like there's certain things that are hanging off, but he's doing a stellar job to hold off Stefan Muller. Stefan Muller still about a second clear of Colpitts, who's a further second clear of Morniveg. No, he's not. It says he is, but that has closed up. That has closed up. So, quite dramatically, Morniveg having a strong start to the lap, but Colpitts, as he has before, reliably keeping his car well placed, not seeming to risk the car too much. All very sensible from the understated Brit. Now, is he going to get his elbows out here, now that I've said that, or is he going to drive relatively sensibly? So far, it's the latter, although Morniveg certainly looking very racy. I think he can see that if he does get Colpitts, there might be 6th place up for grabs. Might still be that anyway, because you never know with the way that this track goes. Sometimes it might be a little bit better to stay just behind us, as Muller there runs slightly wide, doesn't he, off of the corner, but nothing to really affect him too much. We've got De Jong there, gamely hanging on in that. It is a bit of a best out car, isn't it? That's certainly going to be a hefty old repair bill when they get that Ferrari back to the garage there. But gamely fighting on he is. Jake Hanley, meanwhile, is he catching Gabino? That's something maybe to look out for as well, because Pospisil has dropped off the back just a little bit from Van der Waal. It's 1.4 seconds there. Gabino 26 seconds back. Well, he won't be catching people if he's going to miss the apex like that. Saves it so far, Jake Hanley, but it's 12.1 seconds. I suspect that one might be done, as De Jong now 5.3 seconds back, but looking rearwards, not forwards, with Muller, Colpitts and Morniveg all now close to within 2 seconds of the Dutchman in 6th. So officially 5 minutes to go, and normally at this point you think, well, 2 laps to go, anything can happen really. It's not quite the case here, is it, with the Nurburgring being quite what it is. It's probably 2 laps, and I think you're probably all going to be here for about 12 minutes more if you'll gladly follow me. This is Damien van der Waal in 2nd place. He's got Pospisil, Vaclav Pospisil for company, if not really putting too much pressure on. I think those two are settled. In fact, Pospisil does go wide. Not wide enough to cause him any further issues, but that seems like a fairly secure 3rd place. Serafino Gabino in 4th. He's now half a minute back. I suspect it's just a case of bringing it home, as car number 12 as a stop go for speeding in the pit lane. That is done once again with further strife in the Audi. I think we saw him going off in front of Josh Clayton a couple of moments ago down the back straight. So we're going to take a look and see who's still here. Well, we've got 33 cars officially in the race. 4 or 5 of those, it must be said, have been in the pits for a long time. But we've still got, my best guess, about 30 cars still gamely going round. which for this track being what it is, very well done to all drivers, it must be said, because it is a very difficult track to get around in terms of your concentration, in terms of any mistakes, and that's probably a race ender for you. So we've got a lot of drivers still going around. Some have dropped out, but with it being a sort of test event and with it being an off-season event, it's a little bit less serious. So I suspect that a couple of drivers have got the answers that they needed to get. Aragonis is now closed a further 2 seconds in the first sector on Gordon Brown. I think you can see him. Gordon Brown's just going around the corner there, and there is Aragonis. You can just see Brown going out of shots as they go up towards the right-hander. Now, this could be something to stick with towards the end of this lap. I think it might be done by then, because the Lamborghini's not a fast car in a straight line compared to Aragonis's. Stefan Muller, what's happened here? What's happened here? Because Stefan Muller is now in the pits. Lee Colpitts and Maximilian Morneveg have dropped off the back of Daniel de Jong. Has Muller gone in? I mean, this late in the race, your heart breaks, doesn't it? But has Muller gone in on his own, or was there any contact at all? Certainly de Jong's car doesn't look any different. We need to see, nor really does Lee Colpitts' car. That doesn't look any different. So we don't know if there's been any contact or not. And Morneveg's car, can't see anything from the front though. That looks intact. So I think Stefan Muller has had an issue somewhere around the lap, and that, from what was 6th, 7th place, is now looking like race over. You're probably going to be about 22nd, 23rd. Disaster for the German, who, reliably informed, is doing this as part of practice for another event that they're doing. I won't reveal any more details, but I do know that this is a fact-finding mission for a couple of these drivers to get a little bit more experience ahead of further events around this circuit. So we've got now, it's all spaced out, isn't it? 3.5 seconds between de Jong and Colpitts. You've got there 1.2 seconds between Morneveg and Lee Colpitts. Now, 2 minutes to go officially, but you've got, I think, Shigetny in the Mustang. He's now he's going to complete the lap, isn't he, before that clock times out. So I think we've got one more lap after this and about 8.5 minutes to go. So you'll be about 7 into overtime before we get anywhere into the clock. So they've set it up right because they've got 11 minutes there. So no issues with that. You've got Van der Waal side by side with Vaclav Pospisil. Where's this come from? Van der Waal must have made a mistake further around the lap, but here's Pospisil. Is he going to get there? I think he's got the drop on the Ferrari. He's got the overlap and he's got the position. Vaclav Pospisil wasn't willing to accept 3rd place. And now, Damien Van der Waal, you've got to go again, because all your hard work has been undone. And the Czech driver, 2nd now in the Porsche. And that is an excellent move. Takes a lot of bravery to go around the outside and a lot of trust between the two drivers. It must be said, excellent driving from the pair of them. But that now, for Pospisil, is a bonus 2nd place when it was looking like 3rd a little bit earlier on. That'll teach me to write things off. Gabino now is in 4th place. He's going to be a mile back, so we're going to stick with this battle. It's Damien Van der Waal is in 3rd place. And now, what could he do about Pospisil? We're on the last lap, aren't we, with 30 seconds to go. So, this is the battle. Pospisil not thinking forwards, is he? Shigetny is he's gonna win the race, barring a miracle. Pospisil, eyes backwards, I suspect. Now, eyes in the mirrors, because he's going to have some more bother from Damien Van der Waal. Van der Waal's Ferrari does not look like it's willing to give up without a fight. Now, Pospisil coming out of the Dunlop hairpin. This is where the Porsche should be good off of the high traction zone, so he'll be good going into the Nordschleiffe, but he may find himself in trouble a little bit further around the lap. Damien Van der Waal is hanging on gamely in 3rd place. Now, what can he do about getting his place back? Here's what Damien Van der Waal is going to do, because as sooner as I go and get a drink, he goes down the inside, thinks better of it going into the NGK chicane, and Pospisil lives to fight for another couple of corners. This one is going to run and run and run, isn't it? As these two now fight their way through the beginning of the green hell. Pospisil now has got to just at least try and keep it on the island and try and make sure that he's just bees the corner. If he's the corner, then it's not going to be very easy for Van der Waal to get past now, as Pospisil keeps himself just about on the racing line, on the right line. If you go wrong here now, you're off. You're into the barrier. He's got to make sure that he doesn't do that. Van der Waal, meanwhile, hounding, trying to see if he can draw a mistake from Pospisil, who's an experienced driver, but he won't have been under this kind of pressure for a little while now. Van der Waal building his way back up. It's about half a second now, that gap in the slipstream. Is he going to try something here? No, I don't. I think it's going to be more setting up, because you've got a heavy braking left-hander coming up. So they go through the kinks, through the various kinks before they get there. Down the hill, is it going to be any part? I think Pospisil's going to be safe now, going into the tighter left-hander before you get to a left-right, which should favour the Porsche. Now, as we get to the right-hander here, and we're going first through the timing beams. Now, how far back are they? This is more from my reference. Szczesny now is 23 seconds clear, but that's not the race here, because Van der Waal gets a run on Pospisil. They're side by side through the distance. There's contact there. The Czech driver goes onto the grass, and Van der Waal is through. Now there'll be a bit of controversy there. Van der Waal sneaks his way back past, and Pospisil wasn't second for very much longer, was he? Van der Waal now, is he going to streak away? Is that, or is Pospisil going to respond? Is there anything for the Czech driver to come back with? We'll find out now, because we're going to stay with this for a little while. Pospisil back to third, Van der Waal back up to second place. Now, I just wonder how much contact there was, if there was any. The angle we got, really poor, as Pospisil fighting, going side by side as the two over a load of bumps and through the kinks. May have just gotten together. I think all's well that ends well, and I don't think they'll be looking at that. Certainly, I think Van der Waal's going to be in more trouble for things earlier on. I wonder if Pospisil's aware of that. He won't be, because he was a little bit further ahead. So I think Pospisil now has got to keep it safe. Let's see now about plotting in a sec. As long as he keeps him within sight, he'll have a chance down the straight, even if the Porsche doesn't have the greatest of straight line speeds. We've got Serafino Gabino. He's safe in fourth, ahead of Jake Handley, who's not going to challenge him, but he's not going to be challenged either, because De Jong is about further 10 seconds back, 9.5 seconds back, with Colpitts and Mordevec, the other main battle. We'll circle back to that a little bit later on. But Pospisil, is there going to be a response from the Czech driver? Van der Waal goes slightly wider there, doesn't he? So that's going to open the door for the Porsche. The Porsche gets a lovely exit. Is there anything that he can do with it, though? That's the main question. The answer at the moment, probably not, as the two together through miss, hit, miss coming up before they get to a sharp right-hander. This is going to run, provided that they give each other space. Pospisil now all over the back, almost bump drafting Van der Waal. Van der Waal's not going to get a moment's rest now as they go through the left-handed kink before they then set each other up for the hairpin. This is going to be where it's done, I think. Is there going to be? No. Van der Waal has gained a couple of tenths. I think Pospisil got a little bit too close and had to back off. Very fair from the Czech driver, but I think that's going to save Van der Waal for the moment, although not if he keeps missing apexes. So we're going to have another go going into the carousel. Not long to go now. If he can get this right, Pospisil, he might have half a chance. The problem is Van der Waal gets it right just at the same time as well. So that is going to be a thorn in the side of the Czech driver, but he's still keeping him within sight as we head now towards the final part of this race. And I think there, Van der Waal, with that little exit there and through these sweeping corners, they will favour the Ferrari. So he's got to make sure he just keeps it on the island. The gap is now 7/10 of a second, nearly 3/4 of a second. We're going to just check in with Colpitts and Mordevec, although I've done that before. And it looks like Mordevec has got past Lee Colpitts on the last lap. That'll be something to look at as well. We'll find out how that happened, although there is still a long straight for the BMW to try and overhaul the McLaren. Now we're going back to second place, and it looks like Pospisil isn't quite going to get there, although we need to see them as they come onto the Dirtinghoe, the long straight that's coming up in about half a minute's time. Jan Szczesny, meanwhile, he's over the hills and far away. He's going to send a postcard by the time he gets over the line. 23.5 seconds ahead of what is now at the moment Damien Van der Waal. Van der Waal now is looking to just stretch his lead very gently, and I think he's going to do it. Pospisil now, not a part of the track that the Porsche favours, as they now chuck it through some the sweeping right-hander. Left that all. No, Van der Waal does go slightly wide, but I thought it was going to turn into something a lot more than it was. As it is at the moment, the Ferrari looks very serene now as they go through the sweeping right-hander before they then start getting towards the complex. This is where the downhill braking zone is. This is where it does get tough. As long as he sort of manages the way through there, the curve's very, very high there, so you want to stay off of them to a certain degree. The mini carousel's up next. He goes slightly wide. Is that going to open the door for Pospisil? No, it's not. Pospisil's too far back, so I think Van der Waal is going to keep this. Van der Waal is going to keep second place, provided nothing bad happens. He's got a decent cushion now going down the dirting hole, where we'll pick up Jan Szczytny. Szczytny now is parading his way. Well, it's been easy streets since the first half of lap one, really, for the pole. He's now going to stroke his way through to take a dominant debut victory. It's Jan Szczytny through the final corners. And is he going to go to the pit wall to take his team's congratulations? He is, crosses the line. And Jan Szczytny wins the second of the two off-season Tuesday night Formula Racing League events. Jan Szczytny with a dominant display. Now, what about second place? That's going to go to Damien van der Waal, provided he keeps it on the island. He does. Pospisil launches a late attack. I don't think it's going to be enough, as van der Waal now holds on for second place for an eventful last couple of laps between these two. It's going to be Damien van der Waal and Vaclav Pospisil, a game third place, fighting bravely now as we go towards Serafino Gabino. Well, it's been a lonely race since halfway through. He's had battles with Van der Waal, with De Jong, but it's going to be a very impressive fourth place for Serafino Gabino in that brightly coloured Porsche. The striking Porsche now, as long as he keeps this on the island, which he does, keeps it out of trouble, and that will be fourth place for Gabino. Gabino wiggles it across the line. The Italian rightly delighted with that. And that is fourth place. Now, as we go to Damien de Jong, I think de Jong's going to have enough for fifth place. He is, but I think Morneveg is going to take sixth. He is there too, with Lee Colpitts in seventh. We're going to go back to de Jong to make sure they all cross the line as they should. Damien de Jong takes an impressive fifth. What might have been for the Dutchman, the admin, spun with contact with Van der Waal a little bit earlier on, with Maximilian Morneveg in seventh and Lee Colpitts in eighth, with Van der Waal having left the lobby already. Josh Clayton is going to cross the line, I think, for ninth place in the Aston Martin, with Aragonesis having gotten past Gordon Brown a little bit earlier in the lap. Aragonesis recovers from an eventful opening couple of laps to go with the family started nearly plumb last in the Ford Mustang. He finishes what will be 10th after all of that. We've got Jake Hanley as well. We've missed him finishing across the line in 5th place as well. So it's going to see how this shakes up, because people are leaving. So Gordon Brown, what looks like it's going to be a solid at least top 12, I think, for Gordon Brown. I think he's going to end up 12th whilst all this shakes out. But Ivan Glinkin in the Lexus, the beaten up Lexus, probably ending up about 13th ahead of Jamie Christie, who's not going to be able to do anything about Ivan in the Lexus. Gordon Brown is across the line, and he's having a little muck about at the end there. So Gordon Brown has gotten across the line with Glinkin in 11th now, provided that he just gets it through the final couple of corners. It's all a bit spaced out, which you get around here, don't you? So there is Ivan Glinkin. He is going to finish in, it says 11th, I think it's about 13th with all of those that have left rather helpfully, with Jamie Christie now in the beaten up McLaren. Looks like there's further damage there for the man who was on for a podium earlier in the race, if you remember. He's going to take what will be 14th place, if my memory's correct, with Christian Keller a long way back in 13th. So Jamie Christie in 14th, and Keller, what would be 15th? Where is Keller? Is he coming down the front straight yet? No, Christian Keller is not coming down the front straight, because Christian Keller is in strife on the last lap. I wonder if he's run out of fuel, because he is not moving at all. Let's see if we can find, as he retires to the pit lane. Christian Keller, I think, is out. So it's going to be Michel van der Waal in 15th, I think, for BMW. The second of the Van der Waals, the senior of the Van der Waals as well, it must be said, in the BMW. Is he going to... Yeah, he should be 15th, I think, once all this shakes out, because Christian Keller is in a bit of trouble. So Keller not going to finish the race. Looks like he's either crashed or is out of fuel, but he's still out on the racetrack. So Michel van der Waal in the BMW is, by my calculations, 14th, actually, when all this shakes out, because of the couple that have gone. So that is Michel van der Waal. Says 12, a minute behind Jamie Christie, but I suspect that'll be in 14th place. I don't know how long we've got in terms of the timer, so anybody who can help me, please do. Simon Williams is in 15th in the Aston Martin. An excellent showing from the usual AM driver, and a solid night's work for him. Now it's going to be Camille Clack in the Iron Dames Lamborghini, who is going to be next across the line. He's got attention from Stuart Rogers, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Rogers on a bit of a recovery drive after dramas on lap 1, but I think it's going to be a lap too late. Clack, well, he isn't going that quickly through there, but I think he's going to hold the Brit off the pole. Camille Clack is going to end up in 16th place once all this shakes out, with Stuart Rogers in 17th in the Lexus. And that is Graham Didsbury as well, who's pulled over at the side of the road. So Graham Didsbury, a lap down. He's crossed the line as well. It's now, I think, Gareth Wood. Oh, who's that? That is Adrianov, isn't it? He's a couple of laps down already. So no change to the position there, as Wood now makes his way down the dirting hole. We're going to stay with him for a little while because, quite frankly, there's no one else there. I think Keller now, I think he's ran out of fuel. So I don't quite know why he's not in the pit lane, but we'll figure that out a little bit later on. There's still a couple of cars going around, including Gebman and I think car 334, which is Alexander Kalugin. Here's Gareth Wood now as he makes his way into the final complex. Safe enough from Michael Austell and Graham Love in the McLaren and the Porsche. And let's see now as he does indeed finish his way through. We'll soon have full clarity on this. But I make him about 17th when all of this is done and sorted. So we've got Keller there in 14th. Keller's retired. No, there's further drivers that are leaving. Right, so I make this about 16th, 17th, because due to the unique way that ACC does things, people disappear. It says 12th. I'm saying probably 15th or 16th. I'm thinking there. With then a further back, we've got car 77. That's Adrianov in the beaten up Porsche. Car number 92 is Graham Love. He crosses the line now for an official 14th. It'll be about 17th by the time they show this. And Chris Gebman now is, well, he's got a long way to go, hasn't he? He's got a long way to go. You've got Alexander Kalugin in the Porsche. He's just making his way to down the dirting hole. And then it's car 777, which is Adrianov. He's going to just about weave his way across the line in what is a very second-hand Porsche. You'd return that if that's how your car was delivered, wouldn't you? With Adrianov now in what is officially 17th, isn't he? And Didsbury, who's ended up in the pits. And then Chris Gebman, who is the last across the line with Keller. What's happened to him? Because he's just stationary. So we could be filling for a little while here, whilst we try and find out what's happened. Here is Graham Love in the car number 92. So we're going to go to Kalugin, who's 18th currently showing at the moment. And it's now the Russian rocket across the line here. Another action-packed race for Kalugin, who was a victim of circumstance last week as well. Stefan Buller ends up in the pits. He was 19th after strife late on. And then it's Chris Gebman, who's officially 286 seconds back, which is quite a distance, isn't it? But that's the nature of this track. We've now got Gebman coming across the line. Christian Keller has left, or has cleared himself from the track, so this will be it. And then we'll be able to take you through the results. Here is Chris Gebman now, last across the line, going into the final complex. We'll find out exactly what's happened to him after such a strong showing last week, as he rides the curb into the final complex, and what should hopefully be, provided he keeps it all on the island, for, I would make it about 17th. But we'll see here what the Flying Scotsman does. A little bit of drama as he does crash on the last lap, does keep it out of the wall just for a little bit of crowd entertainment. He must know he's last on, so Always good to keep the fans interested as Chris Gedman now crosses the line. And I make that, where did he end up? 21st, so quite a lot of people did leave in the end. So let's return to garage and get all of that. So your winner, Jan Szczęsny in first place ahead of Demian van der Waal in second. He was 3/4 of a second clear of Vaclav Pospisil in third, with Serafino Gabino in fourth. Jake Hanley took a well-deserved fifth place for Aston Martin in was a chaotic race for the Brit ahead of Damien de Jong, with Maximilian Morningberg taking seventh on the last lap from Lee Colpitts. They finished clear of Josh Clayton, who had dramas that meant he had to pit when no one else did. In ninth place for the Aston Martin, Alberto Aragonés fought his way back up into 10th ahead of Gordon Brown's Lamborghini in 11th. Ivan Glinken ended up 12th ahead of Jamie Christie, another man who was on for a podium before dramas early on, with Michel van der Waal in 14th. Simon Williams took an excellent 15th place in the Aston Martin ahead of Camille Clack in the Iron Dames Lamborghini. Stuart Rogers in 17th ahead of Gareth Wood in 18th in the Aston Martin, with Michael Ossel and Graham Love filling out the top 20. It's Chris Gedman in 21st ahead of the luckless Christian Keller, who had issues on the last lap, which meant he could move. I suspect he ran out of fuel, with Graham Dithbury in 23rd and Alexei Adrianov in 24th. Alexander Kalugin ended up 25th ahead of the non-finishers now in Stefan Muller in 26th, who had dramas on the last lap. Trevor Mendes in 27th ahead of rookie Tristan Vizcaino in 28th. Nikita Chepmazov, who with an unserved stop-go penalty took 29th ahead of Shane Dunn in the Audi, with Darren Mark Davies in 31st ahead of Joachim Verrett in 32nd. The non-finishers including Robert van der Sloot in the Ferrari, with Daniel Starkloff in the BMW. Luke Prentice was only 35th and retired early on after an incident, I think, on the second lap. Adam Sharp who retired with damage in 36th place, officially 4 laps down, although I think that was earlier on, with Josef Voltman crashing out of the lead on lap 1. And of Yannick Gerling and Daniel Labdiov, who did not see the end of the first lap. Right, that's me. I've been Jack Prentice. That's the end of our coverage for the last, 1.5, 2 hours or whatever it was. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.